Tun Baligan is a wealthy and influential billionaire, known for his sharp mind, ambitious nature, and a heart that few truly understand. Despite his success and power, he values honesty and integrity above all else, testing those around him to see who is truly trustworthy. Beneath his strong, commanding exterior lies a man capable of deep love, devotion, and vulnerability for the right person. If you enjoy African folk stories filled with love, subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from, and journey with us as the story begins. The sun had barely begun to pierce the early morning mist over Abuja, casting long golden streaks across the bustling city streets. Buses honked, street vendors shouted, and motorbikes weaved dangerously through the traffic, but high above the chaos, the sky shimmered over a mansion that seemed untouched by the world below. This was the palace of Tun Baligan, a man whose wealth had become legend, whose name alone could make investors tremble with excitement. Inside the mansion, marble floors gleamed under the soft light of crystal chandeliers. Walls adorned with contemporary art whispered of refinement and taste, but also of a life lived in solitude. Tund, in his early 40s, moved through his home with the precision of a man accustomed to control. A tailored gray suit hugged his frame perfectly, his cufflinks gleaming under the morning light. Yet behind his calculated demeanor was a loneliness he could not shake. Luxury could not fill the emptiness that gnawed quietly at his heart. At the entrance hall, Kimmy, a young, bright-eyed maid, adjusted her uniform nervously. She had grown up in a small village outside Ibadan, where mornings smelled of wet earth and roasted yams. The city was a world apart, with towers that seemed to scrape the sky and streets pulsing with life that never slept. Kimmy's hands were steady, but her heart raced. This was her first day, and she knew that in a mansion like this, one small mistake could be fatal for her reputation. Tun's voice echoed through the hall, smooth yet commanding. "Kimmy, come here." She hurried forward, careful not to trip over her shoes, careful not to spill a single drop of water she carried in her tray. Her palms were slightly sweaty, but she straightened her back, holding her head high. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice polite, respectful, and trembling just enough to betray her nerves. Tund watched her carefully, noting the honesty in her eyes and the careful way she carried herself. "I like people who are careful, Kimmy, who respect responsibility," he said, his tone softening just slightly. "Do you believe a person's true character shows when they are tested?" Kimmy paused, thinking. "Sir, I believe that even small tasks can reveal who a person truly is," she replied. Her voice was steady, filled with quiet conviction, though she had no idea how prophetic her words would be. He handed her a sleek, black card, the kind of credit card that could buy a car with a single swipe. "I am going to give you a task," he said. "Take this card. Buy only what is necessary. Do not be tempted by luxury. Return with your receipts intact. If you succeed, you will prove that you are trustworthy." Kimmy's eyes widened. She had never held such wealth in her hands, and yet, despite the temptation, she felt no fear, only determination. The city outside seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Streets alive with ambition, temptation, and vice surrounded her as she stepped out of the mansion. She passed glittering boutiques, flashing billboards, and opulent cafes where the elite sipped expensive coffee. Every step was a choice, every decision a test. Kimmy's mind remained clear. She purchased only what was necessary: groceries for the mansion, a few essentials for the kitchen, and nothing beyond her instructions. She handled the card with care, respect, and honesty. When she returned, Tund examined the receipts carefully. Every item was accounted for, every naira accounted for. He studied her silently, noting the subtle humility in the way she returned the card, the quiet dignity in her eyes. "You have passed," he said at last, his voice low, almost reverent. "Most people would have failed. Most people would have been tempted. But you are different." Kimmy felt warmth spread through her chest, a mix of relief and pride. She had not only passed a test of wealth, but had, unknowingly, captured the curiosity of a man who had seen everything the city had to offer and found nothing that touched him, until now. Outside, the city continued its relentless rush, unaware that within a single mansion, a quiet, life-altering story had begun. Days passed, and Tun Baligan could not stop thinking about Kimmy. Her humility, her honesty, The way she carried herself with dignity, it was rare. So rare that in a city filled with ambition and greed, she shone like a single, unblemished star in a sky full of smoke and mirrors. But Tund was not a man who trusted his heart easily. He needed proof, not just of loyalty, but of character. And so, a plan began to form in his mind. A test not just for Kimmy, but for others. He called in several young women from the city's elite social circles. Each one was beautiful, ambitious, and aware that proximity to him could change their lives forever. First was Amina, a fashion designer with eyes that sparkled with calculated charm. Next came Billionaire, a university student whose smile could melt the hardest heart. And then Saad, a social media influencer, accustomed to admiration and power. Each woman entered Tund's mansion with confidence, unaware of the challenge awaiting them. Tund greeted them all with the same calm, almost detached politeness he had extended to Kimmy. "I have a task for each of you," he began, holding out the sleek black credit card that had already proven so revealing. "Take this. Buy what you like, but I am watching. Only honesty and restraint will impress me." The women exchanged glances, eyes gleaming with excitement and hidden calculation. Kimmy watched quietly from the hallway. She had finished her chores and was cleaning a vase by the window, but her eyes never left the scene unfolding before her. She felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. Pride because she had passed the first test. Fear because she knew the world was full of people willing to compromise their morals for wealth. She wondered silently, would they fail? As each woman stepped out into the city streets, temptation was everywhere. The boutiques flashed with luxury items far beyond imagination. Exotic perfumes lined store shelves, and jewelers displayed diamonds that glittered like captured stars. Kimmy had felt the same allure, but restraint had guided her choices. Now, she watched as the others navigated the streets, or rather, failed to. Amina's eyes lingered on a designer handbag she could not afford in 100 lifetimes, yet here she could buy it in a heartbeat. Her hand hovered over the card, and within minutes, she had swiped it for items far beyond necessity. Bolanel, in her excitement, spent lavishly on clothes and shoes she didn't even need. Saad posed for selfies in expensive stores, buying extravagantly just to flaunt her choices online. When they returned to the mansion, Tund examined every receipt, every purchase, and every expression. Kimmy had watched from afar, her chest tight as anticipation and anxiety wove together. She could feel the weight of the moment. This was more than a test of money. It was a test of integrity. And integrity, she knew, could not be faked. Tund's eyes, sharp and unyielding, flicked from one receipt to another. Then he spoke, his voice calm but edged with authority. "Amina, Bolanel, Saad, none of you understand the value of restraint. You failed because you saw opportunity, not responsibility. Greed overshadowed judgment." Their faces fell, shock and embarrassment mingling. Kimmy's heart ached for them, but she also felt a strange relief. She had been different. She had been true. Finally, Tund's gaze fell upon Kimmy. "You," he said softly, almost reverently, "understand what most cannot. You are honest, disciplined, and rare. You have passed a test that others failed." Her cheeks warmed, and her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and humility. The city outside roared with life, yet in this room, time seemed suspended. A quiet bond had formed, unspoken but undeniable, a bond of trust, of respect, and perhaps something deeper that neither had fully admitted yet. For the first time in years, Tund felt a warmth in his chest that no wealth could buy. Kimmy had passed his test, but unknowingly, she had also begun testing his own heart. Could he allow himself to love again? Could he let someone in after years of solitude? The answers lingered, unspoken, as the city continued its relentless rhythm beyond the walls of his mansion. After the other women had left in embarrassment, Kimmy remained in the dining hall, quietly arranging the cutlery and polishing the glasses. Her hands moved carefully, almost mechanically, but her mind was a storm of thoughts. She could still feel Tund's gaze lingering on her when he had announced her success. There had been something different in his eyes, an emotion she had not expected, warmth, curiosity, even admiration. She had never seen a man of such power look at anyone that way before, and the memory made her pulse quicken. Tund returned to the room, closing the door softly behind him. He leaned against the grand wooden table, his arms crossed, as if measuring her every movement. "Kimmy," he said, his voice low and calm, "I've observed you for a few days now. You carry yourself with honesty, humility, and courage. Most people would crumble under the weight of temptation, yet you did not." Her chest tightened. Courage? She had not thought of herself as brave. Just careful, just honest. But hearing it from him made her feel seen. She lowered her gaze, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. "Sir, I just tried to do what was right," she whispered. "I didn't want to disappoint you." Tund smiled faintly, the kind of smile that only softened the edges of a man's sternness. "Disappointment is a choice," he said quietly. "Most people disappoint because they cannot control desire. You surprised me." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Kimmy could hear the faint hum of the city outside, the blaring horns, the distant chatter, the pulse of life in Abuja. And yet within the mansion, the world seemed to shrink to this single moment. Tund moved closer, his presence imposing yet strangely gentle. "I have lived a long life," he said, his tone almost confessional, "and I have seen many people. I have given my trust to many, and been betrayed more times than I can count. But you make me wonder if I have been looking in the wrong places all along." Kimmy's breath caught. She had never imagined her honesty would touch someone like him, someone powerful, untouchable, and revered across the city. Yet here he was, speaking softly, vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. Her hands shook slightly as she continued her chores, careful not to spill anything. But her mind was far away, imagining what it might mean to be more than just a maid in his mansion. Days turned into weeks, and Tund began to assign Kimmy small responsibilities beyond her usual duties. He asked her opinion on minor matters, invited her to accompany him on errands to the city, and began engaging her in conversations that lasted longer than necessary. Each time they spoke, Kimmy felt a strange warmth in her chest, a flutter she had never experienced. And Tund, for all his wealth and experience, found himself anticipating her presence, her laughter, the subtle way she tilted her head when she was curious or thoughtful. One rainy afternoon, as the clouds poured silver onto the city streets, Tund found Kimmy arranging flowers in the grand hall. The rain beat against the mansion windows like a gentle drum, echoing the rhythm of his thoughts. He stepped closer, hesitant but unable to resist the pull he felt toward her. "Kimmy," he began softly, "do you ever wonder why some people are honest even when no one is watching, and others fail when everything is within their grasp?" Kimmy paused, holding a delicate rose between her fingers. I think it's about what matters to a person," she said quietly. "Some care only for themselves. Others care about doing what is right, even if it's hard." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was conviction in her eyes. Tund's gaze lingered on her face, studying every line, every expression. He felt a pang in his chest, a longing he hadn't realized existed. For the first time in years, Tund allowed himself to be vulnerable. You make me believe that maybe there is still goodness in this world," he admitted. Kimmy's heart leapt. Her eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment, the walls between their worlds seemed to dissolve. She didn't know how to respond, so she simply smiled, a gentle, shy smile that reached her eyes and made his chest tighten. That evening, as the city lights flickered to life and the hum of traffic filled the streets below, Tund sat alone in his study, staring at the black card that had started it all. He realized that the test he had given Kimmy was no longer about money. It was about his own heart. She had passed with honesty, humility, and grace, and in doing so, had challenged the fortress of his lifelong solitude. For the first time, he considered something he had thought impossible, opening himself to love again, opening himself to Kimmy. Kimmy, meanwhile, returned to her small room in the mansion, her hands still trembling from the weight of the day. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Tund's words, his gaze, the faint kindness that had begun to break through his stern exterior. She wondered what the future held for a maid like her, in a world of men like him, and whether her honesty and humility could ever bridge the vast gulf between them. The rain continued to fall outside, drumming a soft rhythm of hope, uncertainty, and the beginnings of something neither of them could yet name. The days that followed were both ordinary and extraordinary. Tund Baligan continued his work in the heart of Abuja's corporate jungle, but the mansion had grown quieter, as if the presence of Kimmy had brought a calm he had never known. She moved gracefully through the halls attending to chores, yet Tund often caught himself staring, noticing the way her laughter lifted the corners of her eyes, how she carried herself with dignity despite the gulf of wealth that separated them. One afternoon, Tund called her into his office. The room smelled faintly of old leather and polished wood, the large windows overlooking the city skyline, casting light across the walls. "Kimmy," he said, his voice unusually soft. "I have something important to ask of you." She approached cautiously, unsure if he meant another test or something else entirely. "I want you to accompany me to the city today. There's a meeting at one of my offices, but I need your opinion on something personal, on people." His words were careful, deliberate, but Kimmy could detect the underlying curiosity in his eyes. She nodded silently, heart racing, and followed him into the sleek black SUV parked outside. As they drove through Abuja's crowded streets, the city's pulse beating around them, Kimmy couldn't help but feel both exhilarated and nervous. The skyscrapers reflected the afternoon sun, neon signs flashed on shop windows, and the streets thrummed with life. Yet inside the car, a quiet intimacy settled between them, a closeness neither had dared to acknowledge. At the office, Tund introduced her to his colleagues as someone whose honesty and judgment I trust above all else. Whispers circled the room, some incredulous, some envious, as the staff struggled to reconcile the image of a maid with the authority she now commanded in that brief moment. Kimmy's cheeks flushed, but she stood tall, her eyes meeting Tund's in silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. After the meeting, they walked through the bustling streets, stopping at small cafes and boutique stores, not to buy, but to observe the world. Tund watched Kimmy interact with street vendors, politely declining overpriced goods, always careful, always considerate. It was this unwavering integrity that drew him closer to her with every passing moment. Yet not all eyes were kind. Among the city's elite, murmurs began to spread. "Why would a man like Tund Baligan even consider a maid?" some whispered. Rivals in business saw her as a threat, not for wealth, but for access. Gossip became a shadow hanging over them, an unspoken barrier that neither could ignore. One evening, as the city lights sparkled beneath the dusky sky, Tund invited Kimmy to the mansion garden. The rain had just stopped, leaving the air fragrant and cool. He handed her a cup of tea, and they stood side by side, watching the reflections of neon lights dance across the marble fountain. "Kimmy," he began, his voice quieter than usual, "I've lived my life surrounded by people who wanted something from me. But you want nothing but to do what is right. And yet, I find myself wanting to share my life with you, even knowing how impossible it seems." His words trembled slightly with vulnerability. Kimmy's eyes filled with tears. She had never imagined that honesty and humility could lead to this moment, standing beside a man whose power and wealth dwarfed her own, yet seeing in him a reflection of something tender, something human. "Sir," she whispered, I don't know what to say. I have never known a world like this, and yet, I feel safe with you. I trust you." Amina was known in school as the girl who rarely spoke. Teachers praised her intelligence, but classmates barely noticed her. She carried her notebooks like shields and walked with her head bowed, as though trying to make herself invisible in a world that felt too loud, too harsh, too unkind. Behind her silence lay a painful secret. 2 years earlier, Amina had witnessed a tragic incident, a brutal fight that ended in death. The image haunted her mind, replaying in her dreams, whispering to her in quiet moments. Fear sealed her lips. She never told anyone what she saw. The guilt and terror buried inside her heart slowly poisoned her peace. On a sweltering afternoon, exhausted from hunger and emotional weight, Amina wandered through Oja Apollo Market after school. The heat pressed heavily on her chest, and the voices of traders blurred into a distant hum. Then she smelled it. Mama TTS jollof rice. The aroma wrapped around her like a warm embrace, smoky, rich, comforting, and strangely familiar. It reminded her of her late father, who used to bring home jollof on special occasions before he passed away. For a moment, her chest softened. She approached Mama TT's stall hesitantly. Mama TT noticed her immediately, the girl's downcast eyes, tense shoulders, and trembling hands. Something about Amina stirred an ache in her chest. "Daughter, are you okay?" Mama TT asked gently. Amina nodded, unable to speak. Mama TT, served her a modest plate, adding extra meat without charging more. The kindness nearly broke the girl's composure. Amina took her first bite. The world around her seemed to dissolve. The flavor burst across her tongue, smoky, spicy, layered with warmth and sorrow. But instead of simple pleasure, the rice unlocked something deep inside her mind. Suddenly, the buried memory surged forward. She saw it again. The blood, the shouting, the fallen body, the terrified faces, the moment she froze instead of screaming for help. The weight of her silence crashed down on her chest like a collapsing building. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Then the voices began, soft at first, then louder. Why did you stay silent? You could have saved him. The truth is choking you. Amina dropped her spoon. Her breathing quickened. Tears streamed down her cheeks as invisible whispers filled her head, echoing guilt, fear, and regret. Mama Titi rushed to her side. Amina, breathe. Child, breathe. But Amina could barely hear her. The voices grew stronger, shifting from haunting whispers to desperate pleas. Speak the truth. Let the secret go. Free yourself. Amina fled from the stall, running through the crowded market as though chased by unseen spirits. Traders shouted after her. People stared. But she did not stop until she reached the edge of the city, where traffic noise faded into distant echoes. That night, she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the memory replayed, clearer, sharper, louder than ever before. The rice had stripped away her emotional defenses, forcing her to confront the truth she had hidden. Days passed, and Amina became restless. She stopped attending school. She spoke to no one. But her silence was no longer empty. It was filled with a growing urge to confess. Finally, trembling and tearful, she told her mother everything. Her mother wept. Together, they reported the truth to authorities, reopening a forgotten case that brought justice to the victim's family. When the case concluded, Amina felt something lift from her chest. Not complete peace, but the first breath of freedom she had felt in years. Yet the voices never fully disappeared. Instead, they transformed. Now, they whispered courage instead of fear. They reminded her that silence could destroy and truth could heal. People began to whisper about her transformation. Mama TTS Rice made her brave. It forced her to face her guilt. It broke her silence. But Mama Titi could not celebrate. That night, she dreamed again of Mormi, her late daughter, standing beside the pot of rice. Mama, every heart you awaken carries pain. Mama Titi woke with tears streaming down her face. She wondered if her rice was healing wounds or reopening scars too deep to handle. And somewhere in the city, fate was preparing another story, darker, heavier, and more dangerous than the last. Soon, someone powerful would taste her rice, and their awakening would threaten to expose secrets capable of shaking Olajimere Heights to its core. His name was Chief Damilola Ogonal, one of the most feared and influential men in Olajimere Heights. To the public, he was a respected businessman, a philanthropist who donated to churches, mosques, and community projects. His face appeared on billboards, his name echoed in political gatherings, and his convoy moved through the city like royalty. But behind closed doors, Chief Ogonal carried a past soaked in corruption, betrayal, and blood. Years earlier, he had built his empire by bribery, land grabbing, and secret deals that displaced entire families. He had silenced opponents, destroyed rivals, and buried truths that could ruin him if exposed. He walked with confidence, but his heart was heavy with secrets he could never confess. Yet one afternoon, fate led him to Mama TTS stall. His driver had stopped at Oja Apollo Market to buy food, while Chief Ogonal waited impatiently in the car. The aroma of Mama TTS jollof rice drifted through the open window, smoky, seductive, unforgettable. It reminded him of his childhood. Before power, before greed, before corruption, when his late mother used to cook jollof on festive days. For a fleeting moment, nostalgia softened his hardened heart. Against his usual pride, he stepped out of the car. The market fell silent as people recognized him. Traders bowed their heads. Some whispered. Others glared quietly, remembering the harm he had caused their families. Mama Titi noticed him, her stirring slowing slightly. "Mama, serve me," he said, trying to sound casual. She looked at him for a long moment, not with fear, not with admiration, but with a quiet, unreadable gaze. She served him without speaking. Chief Oganal took his first bite. The spoon barely touched his lips before the memories surged. He saw faces he had tried to forget, displaced villagers crying as bulldozers destroyed their homes. He saw the night. He ordered the intimidation of a journalist named Tunda Jibola, whose investigation threatened to expose his corruption. He remembered signing papers that sent innocent men to prison. The rice burned on his tongue, not with spice, but with guilt. His chest tightened. Each bite dragged another secret into the light. He saw a young woman named Beezy, the former lover he abandoned when she became pregnant. He saw the child he never acknowledged. He saw every lie, every bribe, every betrayal rising like ghosts. His hands began to shake. For the first time in decades, fear pierced through his armor. That night, Chief Oganal could not sleep. Nightmares flooded his mind. Courtroom trials, angry crowds, crying families, and the accusing eyes of those he had wronged. He heard whispers in the dark, confess, return what you stole, face the truth. He began to panic. He doubled his security. He made frantic phone calls to lawyers. He attempted to bury his past even deeper, but the memories would not release him. Days later, he returned to Mama TT's stall, not for food, but for answers. "What did you put in that rice?" he demanded angrily. Mama TT met his gaze calmly. "Nothing but truth," she replied softly. Kimmy's chest tightened, but she did not step back. She lifted her gaze, meeting Mama Balagan's piercing eyes with courage. "Ma," she said softly but firmly, "I am no threat to your family. I am not here to take anything from anyone. I am here because of trust, honesty, and the love we have for each other. Tun sees me for who I am, not my status, not my wealth, not my background, but for my heart." Lekin, Tun's older brother, sneered, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "Love," he spat. "Do you even understand the world you are entering, Kimmy? This is not a village. This is a man who built an empire. How can you, a maid, hope to survive in this world?" Kimmy's hands clenched involuntarily. Her voice, steady but trembling with emotion, rose. "I do not need to survive because I am not here for status or wealth. I am here for love, for honesty, and for trust. If that is not enough for you, then it is not my failing. It is yours." Tund stepped forward, his presence commanding, a calm fury in his eyes. "Enough," he said firmly, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "Kimmy belongs in my life because she is extraordinary, not because of her social class, but because of her integrity. You may not understand it, but I do. And no one will tell me otherwise." His words reverberated like a drumbeat of certainty, unshakable and resolute. Mama Balagan's lips pressed into a thin line, while Lekin's jaw tightened. They realized, finally, that Tund would not be swayed by tradition, reputation, or societal expectation. Kimmy's honesty, humility, and courage had earned a place not only in Tund's heart, but also at the center of the family confrontation. Kimmy exhaled slowly, relief and tension mingling in her chest. She had stood her ground, faced judgment, and yet maintained her dignity. Tund reached for her hand, holding it firmly, silently communicating that she was not alone. Their fingers intertwined, a quiet yet powerful statement of unity against the world outside. Later that evening, after his family had departed with reluctant acknowledgement, Tund and Kimmy walked through the mansion garden. The moon reflected on the marble fountain, casting a soft glow. Kimmy leaned her head against his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. "You were incredible today," he whispered. "I saw the strength I never knew I had in myself reflected in you." Kimmy smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "We were incredible together," she replied softly. "I only stood because you stood with me." The city hummed around them, but for that moment, nothing else existed. The mansion was their sanctuary, their refuge, and their love had been tested and had survived. Tund realized, in that quiet night, that this was only the beginning. Challenges would come, whispers, envy, social barriers, but the fire between them had been lit, and no storm, no judgment, and no shadow of society could extinguish it. Together, they would face whatever came, proving that love forged in honesty and humility was stronger than wealth, status, or expectation. Abuja's skyline glimmered with the late afternoon sun, casting shadows across the city's bustling streets. Yet inside the Balagan mansion, a new tension filled the air, one born not from whispers or judgment, but from anticipation. Tund had made a decision. It was time to acknowledge Kimmy publicly, to show the world that her place in his life was real, deserved, and unshakable. Kimmy was polishing the crystal chandeliers in the grand hall when Tund approached her. His expression was serious, tinged with vulnerability, a side of him few had ever seen. "Kimmy," he said gently, "today we face the world together. I will no longer hide how I feel about you. I want to introduce you to my friends, my colleagues, even the press, if necessary. Will you stand with me?" Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. "Tund, I will," she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling in her chest. She had already faced judgment from family, gossip from the staff, and whispers from the city. But standing beside Tund publicly felt monumental, almost terrifying, yet right. Later that evening, the mansion's grand ballroom was filled with Abuja's elite, business partners, longtime friends, and select members of the press. The chandeliers cast glittering light across polished marble floors. Whispers of curiosity filled the air as guests speculated who Tund's mysterious companion might be. Tund stepped forward, taking Kimmy's hand gently, drawing the room's attention. The murmurs quieted as he spoke, his voice carrying across the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began. "I have been asked why a woman like Kemi is in my life. Let me be clear. Kemi is not here because of my wealth, nor because of status, nor because of what she can gain from me. She is here because of her honesty, her integrity, and her heart. She has passed every test I could set, not only with wealth, but with life itself. She has proven to me what is rare and invaluable: trust, loyalty, and love." The room was silent, guests shifting uncomfortably, some shocked, others intrigued. Kemi's eyes glistened with tears, but she held her head high, feeling the warmth of Tun's hand holding hers. For the first time, she realized that their love could not be hidden, that it demanded recognition, even in the face of envy and judgment. A few voices in the crowd attempted to challenge the declaration. "But she's the maid," one whispered audibly. "Is this really appropriate?" Yet Tund ignored the comments, his gaze fixed on Kemi. "Her worth is not measured by her background," he said firmly. "It is measured by the goodness of her heart, the honesty of her soul, and the love she has for me." Kemi stepped forward, her voice soft but unwavering, addressing the room for the first time. "I am Kemi," she said, "and I am here because I am loved, respected, and trusted. That is all I ask. Nothing else matters." The strength in her words silenced even the harshest critics. By the evening's end, Tund had made his stance clear. Kemi was no longer just a maid. She was the woman he loved, the woman he would protect, the woman he would honor above society's judgments. Guests left with mixed reactions, some in awe, some in disbelief, and some quietly envious. But for Tund and Kemi, the moment was perfect. They had faced scrutiny together, and in doing so, had solidified a bond that was stronger than rumors, jealousy, or societal expectations. As they walked hand in hand through the mansion gardens that night, the city lights sparkling in the distance, Kemi leaned into Tund. "You've given me everything," she whispered, voice trembling. "Not wealth, not luxury, but trust, love, and respect." Tund held her tightly, the weight of emotion pressing against him. "And you've given me back my heart, Kemi," he replied softly. "I had forgotten what it meant to care for someone, to feel truly alive. You've reminded me, and I will spend every day proving that you are the most important person in my life." The night air was cool, fragrant with blooming flowers, and the city below continued its relentless pulse. Yet within the walls of the Balogun mansion, time seemed to stand still. Two hearts had defied judgment, expectation, and envy, and in that defiance, they had discovered a love unshakable, unbreakable, and pure. The city of Abuja shimmered under the late afternoon sun, but beneath the glittering skyline, dark whispers of jealousy festered. Among the Balogun family's business rivals, the news of Tund's public acknowledgement of Kemi spread like wildfire. Some laughed it off, others seethed with envy. Among them was Ademola, a cunning businessman who had long sought to undermine Tund's empire. Seeing the billionaire publicly declare love for a maid felt like a slight he could not forgive, and he resolved to act. Inside the mansion, the tension was subtle but palpable. Kemi moved about her daily chores, her hands steady but her heart uneasy. Though she had faced whispers and judgment from society, this felt different, ominous, like a shadow pressing against her every step. Tund noticed her unease immediately. "Kemi," he said, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. "Something troubles you. What is it?" She hesitated, looking down, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her apron. "Sir, I have felt eyes on me. Not just curious, but hostile. Someone is plotting. I do not know who, but I feel it in the air." Her voice was quiet, but edged with fear. Tund's jaw tightened, and a fire sparked in his eyes. A protective, almost primal intensity that no business rival or societal gossip could shake. "That is enough," he said firmly. "No one will harm you. No one will question your place in my life. I will protect you, Kemi, even if it means taking on the whole city." His words were both a promise and a warning, echoing through the marble halls with undeniable authority. Kemi felt warmth spread through her chest, her fear tempered by the unshakable certainty in his voice. Later that evening, as the mansion lay bathed in golden light from the chandeliers, Tund gathered information discreetly. He discovered that Ademola had been plotting a smear campaign, intending to paint Kemi as a manipulative opportunist to ruin both her reputation and Tund's. The realization struck Tund like a thunderclap. He had expected whispers and judgment, But calculated sabotage, that was a different threat altogether. Tund called Kimmy to the garden, where the fountain's waters glimmered under the moonlight. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine. Kimmy, he began, taking her hands in his, they will try to test us. But we have already passed tests that others fail. Kimmy's eyes filled with tears. She had never imagined that love could be both so tender and so dangerous. Tund, I trust you. But what if they succeed? She whispered, fear trembling in her voice. Tund lifted her chin gently, meeting her gaze with intensity. They will not, he said firmly. Because honesty, integrity, and love cannot be broken by lies or envy. They can try, but we are stronger than any scheme. And I will stand beside you, always. That night, they walked through the mansion gardens under the starry sky. The city below glimmered with lights, oblivious to the storm brewing in its shadows. Kimmy leaned into Tund's embrace, her tears soaking his chest. I feel safe with you, she murmured, even though the world is against us. And you should, Tund whispered back, holding her tightly. Because we face it together. Every challenge, every shadow, they will not break us. Not now, not ever. In the days that followed, Ademola escalated his efforts, sending false rumors to media outlets and attempting to manipulate influential friends to turn against Tund. But each attempt was met with Tund's unwavering protection and Kimmy's steadfast dignity. Together, they navigated the treacherous waters of envy, proving that love founded on honesty and trust could withstand even the darkest schemes. By the end of the week, Tund and Kimmy stood together in the mansion garden once more. The rain had just fallen, leaving the air cool and fragrant. Kimmy smiled through her tears, and Tund pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, every shadow we face only proves how strong we are together. And for the first time since their journey began, the mansion was silent, not with tension or fear, but with the quiet triumph of two hearts united against the storms of the world. The rain had washed the streets of Abuja clean, leaving the city glistening under the morning sun. Inside the Balogun mansion, the air felt lighter, though tension still lingered in the corners. After days of whispers, rumors, and the subtle menace of rivals, Tund knew it was time to let Kimmy see the vulnerability he had kept hidden for years. He found her in the kitchen, carefully preparing breakfast with the precision and care that had always impressed him. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling akara filled the air, but Tund's attention was on her. The way her brow furrowed slightly in concentration, the gentle tilt of her head as she worked. He stepped closer, his presence calm, yet commanding. Kimmy, he said softly, may I join you? Kimmy looked up, startled but smiling. Of course, sir, she replied, her voice warm, yet cautious. Tund moved to stand beside her, watching her hands move with grace and focus. For a moment, the world outside the mansion vanished. The gossip, the envy, the city's relentless hum, all disappeared. There was only this space, this shared quiet, and the soft rhythm of their hearts beginning to sink. I've spent years, Tund began, his voice barely above a whisper, building everything. Wealth, power, influence, and yet, I've never felt alive in any of it. Until you. Kimmy's hands froze mid-motion. She turned toward him, eyes wide, unsure if she had heard correctly. Me, sir? She asked, her voice trembling with disbelief and emotion. Yes, he said, his gaze unwavering. You. Your honesty, your humility, your courage. You've reminded me what it means to care for someone beyond status, beyond wealth. You've reminded me what it feels like to truly trust and be trusted. I've never felt this before, Kimmy. His voice cracked slightly, the vulnerability raw and beautiful. Tears welled in Kimmy's eyes. She had always known she loved him, but hearing him speak so openly, without pretense, left her heart overflowing. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his chest. Tund, I feel the same. I've never known a man who sees me for who I truly am. And to know that you trust me, that you love me, it feels like the world has finally made sense. Tund reached for her hands, holding them gently. We've faced so much already. Rumors, family doubts, rivals trying to tear us apart. But in the midst of it all, I've realized something. Love is not about wealth or appearances. It's about honesty, courage, and a willingness to stand together through every storm. Kimmy smiled through her tears, leaning closer until their foreheads touched. Then we face every storm together, she whispered. Nothing can break us, Tund. Not society, not gossip, not wealth or status. We have something stronger than all of that: trust, love, and truth. For a long moment, they simply held each other, breathing in the quiet intimacy that only love forged in honesty could bring. The mansion around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of their hearts beating in unison. Outside, the city of Abuja went about its chaotic rhythm, unaware that within one grand home, two souls had found a sanctuary of trust and vulnerability that no one could touch. Later that day, Tund led Kemi to the mansion's terrace, where the sun broke through the clouds and illuminated the city below. "Look at this," he said softly, his arm around her waist. "All of this, the wealth, the influence, it means nothing if I don't have you by my side. You've given my life meaning I didn't even know I was missing." Kemi rested her head on his shoulder, her heart full. "And you've given me a place I never dreamed of, a place where I am seen, valued, and loved for who I am, not what I am. That is priceless, Tund." As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the skyline, they stood together, side by side, two hearts united against the world. In that moment, the mansion was no longer just a home of wealth and luxury. It was a sanctuary of love, courage, and honesty. And in that sanctuary, Tund and Kemi knew, with unshakable certainty, that nothing could ever come between them. The city outside was vast, loud, and unrelenting, but inside, in the quiet of trust and devotion, a love had blossomed that would endure every challenge, every shadow, and every storm that life could throw at them. And in that love, they had found their home, each other, and the promise of a life together, unshaken and eternal. Abuja was alive with the relentless hum of cars, vendors, and chatter, but inside Tund Balogun's mansion, an uneasy silence had settled. Over the past weeks, Tund and Kemi's love had grown stronger, but so had the envy and malice of those who could not accept their bond. Among them, Ademola had become more dangerous, refusing to let their happiness go unchallenged. It began subtly, with small incidents, a delayed delivery, a misdirected message, whispers in the staff quarters. But soon, the sabotage became unmistakable. A letter arrived at the mansion, anonymous, claiming to reveal secrets about Kemi's past. The language was malicious, designed to provoke doubt and fear, insinuating lies and false ambitions. Kemi read it, her hands trembling, eyes wide as her heart pounded in her chest. "Tund," she whispered, her voice breaking. They're trying to make you doubt me. They say I'm only here for your wealth." Tears filled her eyes as she handed him the letter. The elegant handwriting seemed harmless at first glance, but the venom behind it was palpable. Tund's expression darkened, a storm brewing behind his calm eyes. He read the letter slowly, each word fueling his determination. He looked at Kemi, and in that moment, all doubt evaporated. "Do you believe it?" he asked gently, though his jaw tightened with fury. Kemi shook her head, voice trembling but resolute. "No, never. I am here because I love you, because I trust you, because I am honest. I cannot control what others say, but I swear, I am true, Tund." Tund reached for her hands, holding them firmly. "And I believe you. I know your heart, Kemi. No scheme, no rumor, no shadow can change that. Whoever sent this, they do not know us. They cannot touch what is real." His voice carried both authority and tenderness, a shield against the fear that had gripped her heart. Determined to confront the source, Tund called Ademola directly. The call was short but intense, Tund's words like thunder. "Stay away from Kemi. Any attempt to manipulate, deceive, or harm her, and you will regret it. This is not a warning, it is a promise." Ademola's arrogance faltered for the first time, sensing the unwavering resolve in Tund's voice. Kemi watched him, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, You would fight for me like this?" Tund cupped her face gently, eyes softening. "Always. You are not just my love, Kemi. You are my life. And I will protect you, every day, for the rest of my life." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, they walked through the mansion garden, rain softly beginning to fall. Kemi leaned into him, feeling the steady strength of his arms around her. "I was so afraid," she admitted softly. "Afraid they would succeed, that I would lose you, that I might not be enough. Tund pressed his forehead to hers, voice low and unwavering. You are more than enough, more than anyone could hope for. And together, we are untouchable. The rain fell around them, soaking their clothes, but neither moved. In the storm, they found a strange peace, as if the world's chaos could not penetrate the bond between them. By nightfall, the mansion felt like a fortress. Every shadow, every whisper, every attempt at sabotage had been met with love, trust, and unbreakable resolve. Kimmy rested in Tund's arms, finally allowing herself to breathe, to feel safe. And Tund realized that the threats outside only strengthened the bond within. The love between them had passed its first true test of danger, emerging stronger, more resilient, and more radiant than ever. The city around them buzzed with life, indifferent to the trials of two hearts within a mansion garden. But inside, Kimmy and Tund had discovered a truth more valuable than wealth, power, or status, that love founded on honesty, courage, and trust could weather any storm. And as the night deepened, they knew, without doubt, that nothing could break them. Not jealousy, not malice, not the shadows of the world. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, pattering softly against the mansion windows, leaving the garden glistening under the moonlight. Inside the Ballaghan mansion, the tension of the past days seemed to ease, replaced by a calm that came only when two hearts truly trusted each other. Tund and Kimmy had faced judgment, threats, and whispered rumors, but now, they allowed themselves to simply exist together, without pretense, without fear. Kimmy sat at the grand piano in the drawing room, her fingers lightly brushing the keys. She had never been formally trained, yet her touch produced notes that were soft, sweet, and strangely mesmerizing. Tund watched her from the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, his usual stern presence softened by the warmth in his gaze. I didn't know you played, he said quietly, not wanting to startle her. Kimmy turned, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. I only play when I need to think. Music helps me breathe when life feels too heavy, she said softly, her eyes meeting his. Tund took a step closer, letting the silence stretch between them, heavy with emotion. Life has been heavy lately, he said, his voice low, but you make it lighter. Your presence, it's like a lighthouse in the storm. Tears threatened to spill from Kimmy's eyes. Tund, I've never known someone to see me the way you do. Even in the face of judgment and whispers, you choose to trust me, to love me. I don't know how to express how much that means. She trailed off, her fingers lightly touching the keys again, producing a soft, haunting melody that seemed to echo the emotions swirling in the room. Tund crossed the room and sat beside her, taking her hands in his. You don't need to express it in words, Kimmy, he said gently. Your heart speaks louder than any words could. I feel it, every day, in every glance, every smile, every quiet moment we share. And I want you to know that I will never stop listening, never stop cherishing you, never stop protecting you. The piano music became a soft background to their conversation, a melody of trust, love, and vulnerability. Kimmy rested her head on Tund's shoulder, allowing herself to finally release the weight she had carried for so long. I've been afraid, she whispered. Afraid that love like this, a love that feels so pure, couldn't last in a world that judges too quickly. But with you, I feel safe. I feel whole. Tund kissed the top of her head softly, holding her as if he could shield her from every shadow in the world. And you are whole, he murmured. Whole to me, Kimmy. Everything else is irrelevant. Society, gossip, even enemies, they are powerless against what we have. You and I, we are stronger together than anything outside these walls. They spent the evening wandering through the mansion garden, sharing small joys. A quiet laugh at the way raindrops clung to leaves, the thrill of running their hands through puddles in the fading drizzle, and the simple delight of being near each other without expectation. In those moments, Kimmy realized that love was not just grand gestures or public declarations. It was the small, tender moments of trust and understanding, the quiet intimacy of two hearts beating in sync. Later, as they sat under the veranda, watching the city lights shimmer across the wet streets below, Tund took her hand and whispered, I've spent years building empires, chasing success, and yet, I never felt truly alive until I met you. You've reminded me that life is more than wealth and power. It's love. It's trust. It's the courage to stand together against anything. Kimmy's eyes filled with tears, and she smiled softly, resting her head against his chest. And you've given me a place where I belong, Tund. A place where I am seen, valued, and loved, not for what I have, but for who I am. That is more than I ever dreamed of. The night deepened, and the city below continued its relentless pulse, but in the mansion garden, time seemed to stand still. Two hearts had faced storms, whispers, and threats, and yet, in the quiet of shared vulnerability and tender moments, they had found a love that was unshakable, unbreakable, and pure. And in that love, they discovered not just each other, but a home, a sanctuary of trust, courage, and devotion that no storm could ever destroy. The morning air in Abuja was crisp, but inside the Balogun mansion, a sense of unease had begun to settle. Despite the growing love between Tund and Kemi, not everyone had accepted their bond. Ademola, the cunning rival who had failed before, was plotting one final scheme, one meant to test the very foundation of trust between them. It began subtly. A mysterious visitor arrived at the mansion, claiming to have urgent news for Tund. At first, it seemed harmless, just another business concern. But when the man revealed documents implying Kemi had hidden intentions, accusations of scheming for Tund's wealth, Kemi's heart sank. She had always been honest, and the idea that someone would try to manipulate Tund into doubting her felt like a dagger to her chest. Tund noticed her distress immediately. His gaze softened, but his jaw tightened with determination. "Kemi, show me the documents," he said, his voice steady yet tinged with anger. She handed them over, hands trembling. The papers were filled with carefully crafted lies, insinuations, and half-truths designed to make even the most trusting man question her loyalty. Kemi's eyes filled with tears. "Tund, I haven't done anything. This is false. I swear it," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her fear was raw, but beneath it burned a quiet defiance. She had faced judgment, whispers, and jealousy before, but this attack felt more personal, an attempt to shake the love she had fought so hard to earn. Tund read through the documents carefully, his expression unreadable at first. Then, slowly, his eyes met hers. "Kemi," he said gently, taking her hands, "I know your heart. I know your soul. These papers, these lies, they mean nothing. I have seen your honesty, your courage, your integrity. I trust you completely." Kemi trembled, relief mingling with lingering fear. "But what if someone else believes it? What if your family, your friends, even the city?" she began, but Tund cut her off, pressing his forehead to hers. "No one's opinion can touch what is real between us. Not gossip, not envy, not even this malicious attempt. You have my heart, Kemi. Nothing can change that." The rival, Ademola, was not finished. Using connections within the media, he began spreading stories hinting at deception and manipulation, trying to paint Kemi as a gold digger. Headlines appeared in the early evening, carefully crafted to create doubt and scandal. But Tund refused to engage in panic or anger. Instead, he chose transparency. He invited Kemi to stand with him on the terrace that night, the city lights glittering beneath them. "We face this together," he said firmly. "We will not hide. We will not fear. The world may try to tear us apart, but honesty and love are stronger than lies and envy." Kemi's hand found his, and she squeezed it, the warmth of their connection a shield against the chaos outside. Together, they crafted a public statement, not of defiance, but of truth. Tund praised Kemi's honesty, integrity, and courage, making it clear that no document, rumor, or scheme could shake his trust in her. Kemi spoke alongside him, her voice steady, confident, and unwavering. "I am here because of love, respect, and honesty," she said. "Not wealth, not status, not influence. Nothing else matters." By the end of the night, the rivals' schemes had failed. The city murmured, some in disbelief, some in awe, but the bond between Tund and Kemi had only grown stronger. They had faced deception together, stood in public defiance of envy, and emerged victorious, not through power or wealth, but through honesty, trust, and an unwavering love that neither rumors nor schemes could ever tarnish. As they stood on the terrace, watching the city shimmer below, Kemi rested her head against Tund's chest. Every challenge, every attack, "It only makes me love you more," she whispered. Tund pressed a kiss to her hair. "And I love you more, Kemi. We've passed every test, and nothing, no one, can break us." The rain began softly, drizzling over the terrace, but they didn't move. Instead, they let it wash over them, symbolizing the cleansing of every lie, every fear, every attempt to divide them. In that moment, the mansion was no longer just a home. It was a fortress of love, trust, and unshakable commitment. And in that sanctuary, Tund and Kemi knew they could face anything, together. The city of Abuja glittered under the warm glow of the late afternoon sun, but inside Tund Balogun's mansion, a quiet excitement filled the air. Tund had spent days planning something extraordinary, an expression of love so true, so intimate, that Kemi would understand the depth of his feelings beyond words. For him, it wasn't about wealth, opulence, or grandeur. It was about creating a moment where their hearts could speak louder than the world ever could. Tund sat in his study, reviewing plans for the evening. Candles would line the terrace, casting a soft golden glow over the garden below. Flowers would bloom in every corner, their fragrance mingling with the cool evening air. A soft melody, one that Kemi loved, would play in the background. And at the heart of it all, he would ask her the question that had been burning in his heart for weeks: to spend a lifetime together. Kemi, unaware of Tund's plans, was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared tea. She felt a strange anticipation in the air, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen, but she could not have imagined the grandeur of Tund's intentions. Her heart beat faster, a mix of curiosity and the flutter of excitement she had felt only around him. As evening